just seeing the people get up and put their hands together for a song that you wrote, to me, that's what it's all about. That's what makes me keep going back.
October 20th, 1977. A small plane carrying one of America's biggest rock bands falls from the sky into the forests of Mississippi. Minutes earlier, the passengers had been told to brace for impact. Among them was Ronnie Van Zant, a man who had spent years telling friends and family that he would never live to see his 30th birthday. Most people dismissed it as another strange remark from a rebellious rock star, but when the wreckage was found, his chilling prediction had come true. This is the extraordinary rise of Lynyrd Skynyrd and the story of the man who seemed to know how it would end. Chapter 1. A Rebel is Born. Long before stadiums echoed with the opening notes of Freebird, Ronnie Van Zant was just another kid growing up in Jacksonville, Florida. Born in 1948, Ronnie grew up in a working-class family. His father, Lacey Van Zant, earned a living as a truck driver. But trucking wasn't the only thing that shaped him. In his younger years, Lacey had spent time as a prize fighter, and he believed his sons should grow up tough enough to handle whatever life threw at them. Ronnie often traveled with his father while he worked. Hours spent on the road became hours spent listening to music on the radio. Every new song fueled his imagination, and without realizing it, those long drives were laying the foundation for a future that would change Southern rock forever. By the age of 16, Ronnie had already made up his mind. He wasn't going to spend his life doing ordinary jobs. He wanted to be a musician. Like many teenagers with impossible dreams, he gathered a few friends and formed his first band. It was called Us. The name didn't last very long, because the group quickly broke apart. For many people, that would have been the end. For Ronnie, it was only the beginning. Chapter 2. Building Something Bigger. Not long after his first band dissolved, Ronnie joined forces with drummer Bob Burns, guitarist Gary Rossington, guitarist Alan Collins, and bassist Larry Junstrom. The musicians were incredibly young. Some were barely teenagers. Experience wasn't something they had. Determination was. Their new group was called My Backyard. Soon after, the name changed again to the Noble Five. Money was almost non-existent. Instead of earning real paychecks, they performed wherever they could. School dances, local clubs, neighborhood events, often accepting little more than gasoline money and a few drinks in return. But every performance made them better. Every audience taught them something new. Every mistake pushed them closer to discovering the sound that would eventually make them famous. There was only one problem: practice. The band rehearsed at their parents' homes, filling quiet neighborhoods with loud guitars, pounding drums, and Ronnie's unmistakable voice. Not everyone appreciated it. Neighbors complained. Police officers were called. Eventually, it became impossible to continue rehearsing there. Instead of giving up, Ronnie's father helped the band find another place, an abandoned house surrounded by farmland on the outskirts of town. The band nicknamed it Hell House. Small, hot, old, almost falling apart, but it belonged to them. Far away from complaining neighbors, they turned the volume up as high as it would go. Hour after hour, day after day. Inside that rundown building, Lynyrd Skynyrd's future sound slowly began to take shape. Chapter 3. Searching for an Identity. Even after finding a rehearsal space, one problem remained. The band still hadn't found its identity. Almost every time they booked another show, they appeared under a completely different name. Sometimes they were the Wildcats. Other nights they became the Sons of Satan. Then came names like Conqueror Worm, The Pretty Ones, and 1%. It wasn't that they lacked confidence. They simply hadn't discovered the name that truly fit who they were. Ironically, that perfect name would come from someone they couldn't stand. Chapter 4. The Teacher They Never Forgot. Most members of the band attended Robert E. Lee High School. The school enforced strict appearance rules. Hair couldn't touch the collar. Sideburns couldn't extend below the ears. Shirts had to stay tucked in. Belts were mandatory. For Ronnie and his friends, who were already embracing the look of rock musicians, these rules felt unbearable. Ronnie found creative ways to avoid punishment. Before school, he'd slick his hair back with Vaseline, so teachers would think it was short enough. For a while, the trick worked, until one gym teacher noticed. His name was Lynyrd Skynyrd. After gym class, when everyone's hair became wet, the disguise disappeared. The long hair was impossible to hide. Trips to the principal's office became routine. Suspensions followed. The conflict only grew worse. Eventually, one band member became so frustrated that he gave the teacher an obscene gesture and dropped out of school altogether. A few nights later, while performing for a crowd that included many former classmates, Ronnie made an announcement. The band had a new name. It was inspired by the very teacher who had spent years trying to force them to cut their hair. From that moment on, they would be known as Lynyrd Skynyrd. The rebellious joke would become one of the most recognizable names in rock history. Chapter 5: The Long Road to Success. With a name that finally stuck, Lynyrd Skynyrd quickly became one of Jacksonville's most talked about bands. Night after night, they played anywhere that would have them. Small bars, dance halls, local clubs. Sometimes they drove for hours just to perform for a handful of people. The money was barely enough to keep them going. But Ronnie Van Zant wasn't chasing a paycheck. He was chasing perfection. Every show became another lesson. Every mistake became another opportunity to improve. While many bands dreamed of becoming famous overnight, Ronnie believed greatness couldn't be rushed. He demanded discipline from every member of the band, pushing them to become tighter musicians every single performance. Years of rehearsing in Hell House and endless nights on the road slowly transformed a group of teenagers into one of the strongest live bands in the American South. People began talking. Record companies started paying attention. Soon, opportunity knocked. Chapter 6: The Deal. Ronnie walked away from. Around 1970, Lynyrd Skynyrd recorded a demo that caught the attention of Capricorn Records. For most struggling musicians, this would have been the dream. A record deal meant money, professional studios, national exposure, the chance to finally escape years of playing tiny clubs. But Ronnie Van Zant shocked everyone. He said no. To outsiders, the decision made no sense. The band had spent years struggling, yet when success seemed within reach, Ronnie walked away. According to the transcript, he believed Lynyrd Skynyrd simply wasn't ready. He wanted more experience. He wanted a better sound. Most importantly, he wanted the band to earn success rather than stumble into it. Instead of signing, they returned to what they knew best: touring, practicing, improving. For 3 more years, they continued living on the road, playing show after show while refining every song, every guitar solo, and every harmony. Looking back, that decision may have been one of the most important moments in the band's history, because when opportunity returned, they were finally prepared. Chapter 7: The Breakthrough. In 1973, MCA Records approached the band with another recording contract. This time, Ronnie accepted. The years of patience had paid off. Lynyrd Skynyrd entered the studio to record what would become their debut album. When it was released, audiences immediately noticed something different. This wasn't polished pop music. It wasn't trying to imitate anyone else. The band blended blues, country, and hard rock into a sound that felt unmistakably Southern. Listeners connected with it instantly. Songs like Tuesday's Gone and Simple Man introduced audiences to Ronnie's heartfelt songwriting, but one song stood above the rest: Free Bird. The emotional ballad slowly built into one of the most famous guitar finales in rock history. It became more than a hit. It became Lynyrd Skynyrd's identity. At concerts, fans waited all night for those opening piano notes. According to the transcript, during one performance, Ronnie jokingly asked the audience what they wanted to hear. The crowd roared back with one answer: Free Bird! Instead of playing a short version, the band launched into a performance lasting around 14 minutes. It became one of the defining live moments of their career. Years later, audiences at completely different concerts would still shout "Free Bird" whenever artists asked what song they wanted to hear, a lasting tribute to Lynyrd Skynyrd's most iconic song. Chapter 8. Fame Changes Everything. Success came quickly. The band that once accepted gas money for performances was now selling records across America. Concert venues grew larger. Crowds became louder. Their name spread far beyond Florida. But fame didn't change Ronnie Van Zant's personality. If anything, it amplified it. He remained fiercely independent. On stage, he almost never wore shoes. Performing barefoot became part of his image, making him instantly recognizable. Yet beneath the relaxed appearance was someone who demanded excellence. Ronnie expected every band member to give everything they had. According to the transcript, if someone wasn't taking a performance seriously, he wasn't afraid to confront them, sometimes physically. Whether a bandmate was distracted during a song or behaving in a way Ronnie didn't approve of, he responded immediately. He believed Lynyrd Skynyrd's reputation depended on every performance. There was no room for carelessness. His leadership style earned both respect and fear. The bandmates knew exactly how talented he was. They also knew how explosive his temper could become. Chapter 9. Living Like Rock Stars. As Lynyrd Skynyrd's popularity exploded, so did the excess that often followed rock bands during the 1970s. According to the transcript, the members developed a reputation for heavy drinking and frequent fights. When arguments weren't happening with strangers, they often happened among themselves. Hotel rooms were sometimes left in ruins. Ronnie himself had several run-ins with the law. By 1976, the transcript says he had been arrested more than a dozen times. Despite the chaos, the music never stopped. Between 1974 and 1976, the band released multiple successful albums and continued climbing higher. One song in particular became another defining anthem, "Sweet Home Alabama." It celebrated Southern pride and quickly became one of the most recognizable rock songs ever recorded. Lynyrd Skynyrd had finally reached the level Ronnie had envisioned years earlier, but success also brought new pressures. The band's wild lifestyle was beginning to catch up with them, and before long, warning signs would begin appearing, both on the road and in Ronnie's own words. Chapter 10. The Band That Refused to Follow Rules. By the mid-1970s, Lynyrd Skynyrd had become one of the biggest rock bands in America. Sold-out concerts, hit records, thousands of devoted fans. But Ronnie Van Zant had never been the type of person to let fame change who he was. If someone told him not to do something, he usually wanted to do it even more. That attitude reportedly led to one of the band's most famous stories. According to the transcript, Lynyrd Skynyrd opened for the Rolling Stones at the 1976 Knebworth Festival in England. The stage was designed to look like the Rolling Stones' famous tongue logo. Before the performance, frontman Mick Jagger reportedly gave the band one instruction: don't perform on the giant tongue. For most opening acts, ignoring a request like that would have been unthinkable. But Ronnie wasn't interested in playing by someone else's rules. When it came time to perform Freebird, he led the band onto the tongue anyway. The crowd loved it. The Rolling Stones reportedly did not. According to the transcript, the incident permanently damaged the relationship between the two bands, and Lynyrd Skynyrd never opened for them again. For Ronnie, it was another example of the rebellious personality that had defined him since high school. Chapter 11. Warning Signs. As the band continued touring, success came with a cost. The constant travel, the pressure, the partying, it was beginning to catch up with everyone. In 1976, guitarist Alan Collins crashed his car after drinking. Not long afterward, guitarist Gary Rossington also crashed his vehicle, reportedly after driving under the influence. His injuries were serious enough that upcoming tour dates had to be canceled. Rather than feeling sorry for his bandmates, Ronnie reportedly fined both musicians thousands of dollars. To him, their actions had hurt the entire band. He demanded accountability, even from his closest friends. But while the band dealt with those accidents, Ronnie himself kept saying something far more disturbing. For years, he had told friends and family that he would never live to celebrate his 30th birthday. At first, nobody believed him. They assumed it was just another dramatic statement from a rock star. As time passed, the prediction never changed. Chapter 12, The Final Flight, October 17th, 1977. Lynyrd Skynyrd released their newest album, Street Survivors. The band was preparing for another tour. Everything appeared to be going exactly as planned. Just 3 days later, everything changed. On October 20th, Ronnie Van Zant and the rest of the band boarded a flight from South Carolina to Louisiana. Somewhere over Mississippi, disaster struck. According to the transcript, the aircraft ran out of fuel. The pilots warned everyone to prepare for an emergency landing. Inside the cabin, there was little anyone could do. Moments later, the plane hit trees before crashing into the forest below. The impact was devastating. Ronnie Van Zant was killed instantly after suffering a fatal head injury. He was only 29 years old, exactly as he had predicted. The crash also claimed the lives of guitarist Steve Gaines and backing vocalist Cassie Gaines. Other members of the band survived but suffered severe injuries that would stay with them for years. One of the greatest bands in American rock history had been changed forever in a matter of seconds. Chapter 13. After the crash news of the tragedy spread rapidly, fans across the country struggled to believe it. The voice behind Freebird, gone. The man who had built Lynyrd Skynyrd from nothing, gone. According to the transcript, Ronnie's funeral was filled with overwhelming emotion as family, friends, and fans gathered to say goodbye. He was buried wearing his trademark black hat, with his favorite fishing pole placed beside him. It seemed like his story had finally come to an end. But even after death, peace would not last forever. Years later, vandals broke into Ronnie Van Zant's tomb, forcing his family to move his remains to another location. It was another heartbreaking chapter in an already tragic story. Without Ronnie, Lynyrd Skynyrd disbanded. For years, it seemed impossible to imagine the group without the man whose voice had defined it. Eventually, the surviving members reunited. This time, Ronnie's younger brother, Johnny Van Zant, stepped in as lead singer, carrying the music forward while honoring his brother's legacy. Some bands are remembered because they sold millions of records. Others are remembered because they changed music forever. Lynyrd Skynyrd did both, from rehearsing in a rundown building called Hell House, to writing songs that became timeless rock anthems. To a tragic plane crash that ended an era, their story is one of ambition, rebellion, success, and heartbreaking loss. Ronnie Van Zant once refused to let anyone tell him how to live. He followed his own path, trusted his own instincts, and built one of the most influential Southern rock bands of all time. Nearly 5 decades after that final flight, songs like Freebird, Simple Man, and Sweet Home Alabama continue to fill stadiums, playlists, and radio stations around the world. The man who believed he would never reach 30 left behind something far more enduring than a long life. He left behind a legacy that still echoes every time the first notes of Freebird begin to play. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more stories from music history, and let us know in the comments which legendary artist we should cover next.